in the back? Okay, very good. So a couple things before I begin. I did go to BYU undergrad, and then I went to grad school at the U, so I know who I'm speaking to here. And full disclosure, I teach at the U as well. I'm a fan of both universities. I did not grow up in Utah, so I understand the rivalry, but I didn't grow up with it. So I live in Utah County, and on game days, I've been known to fly a Utah flag in Utah County, so don't throw too many tomatoes or anything at me. I love speaking to youth. I love speaking to younger people like yourself. The takeaway from this lecture, what I want you to take away from this, is I want to encourage you to do hard things. And that's how it ties into starting a business. Starting a business is not easy. I started my business 20 years ago as a consulting practice, and I absolutely love it. One of the things that I love mostly about it is it gives me freedom to do stuff like this. And you know, you're always beholden to somebody. I always tell them, I have 3 boys. I always tell them, you do have a boss. You know, well, you're dad, you're the boss. Well, yeah, I get that, but you have clients as well. So, and my wife is the ultimate boss, personally. That's what I always say. But the clients are always the boss. You are, of course, beholden to them and making sure that things are going correctly for them. You could say, you know, the customer is always right, and so our clients, you know, they're the kings. We have really good friendships. I have good personal friendships with many of our clients, in fact, most of them. And they know what I do. I keep them in the loop, and they're excited for me, and they watch this. So it really is kind of the best of both worlds. But I can't say enough good about entrepreneurship. My dad raised me that way. He worked in a corporate environment for 37 years for the same company, Baxter Labs. And a great example. He was a very hard worker, but from a very young age, he was always telling me, start a business, be an entrepreneur, start a business, you know, do this, you could do it. And so I had a great mentor in my dad kind of pushing me to do something entrepreneurial. So I would throw that out to you guys. The other thing that I really like about climbing like this is I like to solve problems. There's tons and tons of little micro problems when you're climbing like this, and I love it. It scratches an itch for me. I think if you are good at solving problems or like to look at something, you don't shirk away from that, then you're in the right place. Because starting a business, lots of little problems, and you're solving problems for clients, trying to constantly improve. And so if that is speaking to you as well, then you're in the right place. You're probably on the right track to start a business. So I want to talk about my experience climbing Mount Everest. I primarily will focus on this, and you're very welcome to ask. If there's a really burning question, you have a burning question in here, feel free to ask. If not, afterwards, we're going to go up and have kind of a Q&A as well, and you can ask any question you want. I don't mind at all. A couple questions I'll answer right up front for you. People always ask, how do you go to the bathroom way up high with all the gear on? And the answer is you don't. And the reason you don't is because when you're above about 25,000 feet, 26,000 feet, it's called the death zone. There's not enough oxygen to support higher life up there. So if you spend 2, 3, 4 days up there without supplemental oxygen, even with supplemental oxygen, you will die. There's zero question about it. During the 24-hour period, any 24-hour period that you're there, you lose or you burn about 30 to 35,000 calories in a 24-hour period. I said that correctly. I came home about 18 pounds lighter, and I'm not a very big person, but that was close to 10% of my body weight. And that just happens when you climb. Your body is trying to just survive, and so it's burning calories just to keep warm, and anything you put in, your body is using immediately, nothing comes out of you. So that answers the first question. The second question is, do you see dead bodies? And the answer is yes. There are about 226 bodies, to almost be exact, above Camp 4. They call it the South Col. So from there to the summit, there's about 226 is what they say. It's too difficult to get them down. You know, for us, it would be simple thinking, well, if somebody were to perish right here on the floor, call the ambulance, somebody comes and gets them and hauls them away. It's not like that up there. You might as well be on the moon. It really is, when you leave the South Col, it's kind of every man for themselves or woman. And so when you're up above that elevation and above the South Col, if you drop, that's pretty much it. And you kind of have to go into it knowing that eyes wide open. So those are two questions I always get. I'll answer them right up front for you. Mount Everest actually has two names, Sagarmatha and Chomolungma. Sagarmatha is in Nepali, and Chomolungma is in Tibetan or Chinese. So I always start off my presentations by saying namaste, and that's done by putting your hands together like this, and then you bow and say namaste. So I say it to you, now you have to say it back. Namaste. I love it, cool. So the namaste, who is this, by the way? Who knows who this is for a bonus point? Dalai Lama, exactly. He's a leader of the Buddhist faith. This Dalai Lama, he's, I don't know if he's 90 yet. He's late 80s, something like that. He's been in exile since 1950. This is the same Dalai Lama. He's been Dalai Lama from birth. In the 50s, the Chinese moved in and pushed all the Buddhists out. They pushed them into Nepal. If you've ever seen, like on the back of an old Jeep or an old truck, Free Tibet, that's what they're talking about. They want the Chinese out. Unfortunately, the Chinese moved in. Not a lot of people know this. It's not widely known. It is more now. The Chinese moved in among other reasons, but the primary reason was they needed big open space to do nuclear testing in the 50s and 60s. So that's why they took over all that area of the world. It's very sad, and pushed all these guys out. So in Nepal, in Tibet, in areas in India, I'm sure many of you have been, some of you have been in Nepal or been to India before. That's what everybody says. I love it. I think as an American, we just get in the habit of saying, hey, what's up, how you doing? And sometimes it can be not very genuine, but when you say namaste, the goodness in me recognizes the goodness in you, I think it's more genuine. It's just kind of a fun thing to say. So I want to talk to you guys, and this is where I think it could tie into business a little bit here. Why do hard things or why do difficult things? And again, if you're the kind of individual who likes to do difficult things and you know, you're not going and running the other direction when somebody says something's difficult, again, you're probably in the right place and you're probably the right person for starting a business, because it is challenging, it is difficult to do for sure. But I like this quote. This is from Pope Paul VI. All life demands struggle. Those who have everything given to them become lazy, selfish, and insensitive to the real values of life. The very striving and hard work that we so constantly try to avoid is the major building block in the person we are today. So if you take anything away from me talking today, if you don't remember anything about Mount Everest, just remember that mountain climber guy said to do difficult things. Our society, and certainly not with you guys, because just the fact, again, that you're sitting in here, had to go through I have a senior right now at Lone Peak, and he's applying for BYU. We literally, like this last weekend, we were writing essays, and there's a lot to get into school here. So my hat's off to you guys for just getting into school here. You're the best of the best here, so you should be patted on the back for that. So I'm probably not speaking to the group that I really should be speaking, because you guys are already doing difficult things, and I'm sure you're not shirking away from this. But I can't challenge you enough to volunteer to do difficult things. Usually I give a lot of firesides, and usually I tell youth, younger kids, I'll tell them that one of the number one fears in life is public speaking, and I usually challenge them next time the bishop invites them to speak in sacrament or speak at a fireside or something. I always say, volunteer, jump right up for it. You know, get in there and be involved with it, try to overcome your fear, because it'll make you stronger, make you a better person for doing something like that. Interestingly enough, Pope Pius XI, this guy right here was the first pope to climb a route on Mont Blanc, and it's actually called the Pope Route today. I know it seems funny to think that a pope would climb a mountain, but this guy did. He was known for doing a lot of climbing. This is President Beck. He was our General Young Men's president until just a few years ago, but he basically says the same kind of thing. We have a legacy of doing hard things in the church. We've always done hard things and will continue to do hard things. Hard things stretch us and allow us to bless others. Our youth are the future of the church, and they must be prepared for the difficult days ahead. I really like this, and I like thinking about, I come from pioneer ancestry, and I like it where it says legacy of doing difficult things. Certainly my ancestors, I get strength from them. And knowing that my great-great-grandfather left England at 15, came across the plains by himself, and joined the church here in Utah. That's a big deal, to think about leaving your homeland and potentially never seeing your family again, and coming here to the United States, which at the time was very strange. This was a new country. We were full of, and going to the West, think about that. It's very, very strange to come here. It's not like it is necessarily today, but I get strength from my pioneer ancestry and knowing that they did something very, very difficult as well. I like that. So I set a goal about 10 years ago to, let me back up for a second. As a kid, I always knew I wanted to climb Mount Everest. I was fascinated by it. And when you set a goal like that, you can't just go and do something like this because it's so high. You have to do all these other little small goals. So again, I'll liken it to starting a business. You can't just say, next year I'm going to start a business and make $5 million. There's all these little small goals that have to go into it and constant improvement. Same way with setting a big giant goal like this. I knew I wanted to do this one, but I knew I wasn't good enough at the time to jump into doing this. So I thought, why not set a goal to climb the 7 summits? So I think it was about 12 years ago, I set a goal to do this. And basically what I did is each year I ticked off one. And I just said, okay, this year I'm going to go do this one at Aconcagua. And then the next year I'm going to go do this one. And so that's essentially what I did. The only one I had to repeat twice was this one right here. People always ask me, I'll answer this question as well, which one was the most difficult? It's this one right here. Denali is the coldest. I think this is colder than Everest. This is run by the National Park Service, and they will not allow Sherpas or anybody carrying, porters carrying your load. You have to carry everything yourself. And because of that, I think it makes this more difficult than this. Here you've got the Sherpas hauling stuff for you. They're bringing food to base camp. They're hauling they're doing the heavy lifting. In fact, I will throw this out there. I'm very vocal about it. If you meet anybody that's climbed Everest that says they did it on their own, you can tell them they're full of it, because there's no way you're getting to the top of that thing without the help of the Sherpa people that are there helping carry the burden of the load. The Sherpa we climbed with, his name was Tile Nuru. I climbed with another friend from here in Utah, and he was our personal Sherpa while we were climbing. And he'd been to the summit 8 times, and I asked him, I said, why do you climb? Do you enjoy this? For us, it's, this is something different than, you doing. And he said, no, I do enjoy it. This is my 8th time, so I'm not as enamored with it as you are, but I do this so I can make money to send my children to school. He had a boy and a girl, and he was given the opportunity to get an education at the Sir Edmund Hillary School in that area of Nepal, and he learned English. In fact, he speaks like the King's English, British English, which is superior to American English. We speak kind of a slang English. So he spoke very good English, and I thought it was super noble that he wanted to do this just to make money for his children. I thought, thumbs up, way to go, Tile. So he was with us the whole time. The Sherpa people, their DNA is different than ours, and that has been scientifically proven. They have different markers. They're able to oxygenate better than us. It's just the way it is. And so he would always be ahead of us, super humble guy. He'd always be ahead of us. He's carrying 3 times what we're carrying, and he knew we thought we were pretty cool, but he'd always turn around and be like, come on guys, try to keep up. And he always had another gear. He'd always be pushing ahead of us. He was just that much stronger than us. And he was just very humble and very nice about it. So anyway, this is the goal that I set, to climb all 7 of these. I went to Vincent, Antarctica last year and finished up my goal. I did that one last. Most people save that one to last because it's not as difficult as the other ones, and it's the most expensive to go there, so people don't want to go there and do that one if they're not going to get the other ones. I actually did 9 summits. To give you a little bit of a background here, I'm a little anal retentive about things, and so some people argue that Elbrus right here in southern Russia isn't part of the European Union, so some people don't count this one, and they say, no, it's Mont Blanc. So I did that one right there. And then the other one is Mount Kosciuszko, and this is down in Australia. And so there are some people that think it's just Australia. That's the continent right there. Most geology students would tell you that it's the greater continent here. It's called Oceania. And so it includes Papua New Guinea, New Zealand, and then parts of Melanesia out over here. When you ask people in Australia what the high point is, well, they say, of course, it's Kosciuszko because they have national pride, right? But then you ask them, well, what continent is New Zealand on? And they look at you puzzled. Well, it's kind of its own thing. Well, it has to be part of something. So, in my humble opinion, Carson's Pyramid's the high point. This is 16,000 feet. That's a climb. This is difficult to do. This one is 7,300 feet. It's not quite as high as Park City, and you can take a chairlift to the summit. So it doesn't, in my humble opinion, it doesn't quite count as a mountain. Is there any Australians in here I've just terribly offended? Oh, no. Have you been up Kosciuszko?
I actually haven't. I was one kind of close to it.
Yeah.
I haven't been up it, and
It's a very beautiful country. Yeah. Well, what do you think? Is New Zealand part of, is it part of a greater continent here?
I think it, like, it's something to
Yeah.
We're not the same, like, land mass.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you told me, like, underlying geology,
I'm putting you on the spot.
New Zealand is in here.
Are there some Kiwis in here too? Where are some Kiwis? That's what they call New Zealanders. They call them Kiwis. So, okay, very good. Well, anyway, it's semantics. We'll just go with that for now. And Australia was a very nice place to go. I'd love to live there for a little while. So this is what Everest looks like when you get to base camp. This is on a hill. I didn't take this picture. This isn't my graphic at all. But this is kind of up on a hill near base camp. When you get to base camp, you actually can't see the summit right here. And when you climb Mount Everest, you end up climbing it probably 4 or 5 times. So you get to base camp, and just getting to base camp takes about a week or a week and a half. And this is 17,500 feet. So even like right when you get to base camp, you're taking a step like this, and you're taking a couple breaths, and then another step like this. You're moving very, very slow until you get acclimatized. It's very difficult even just to walk around. Like after a while, you get used to it. It's not a problem anymore. When you're at base camp and acclimatized for a bit, you go to Camp 1. At Camp 1, you spend a night or two. You come all the way back down to base camp, and you let your body rest. It's that draining and that demanding on your body. You'll rest here for a few more days. Go to Camp 1 again. Come all the way back down. Rest. Then you're going to go to Camp 2. Spend a day or 2 or 3. Come all the way back down. Rest. You might do that one more time, and then come all the way back down and rest. Then when you're feeling really up to it, you're going to go to Camp 3. And at Camp 3, that's where you spend probably one night because it's so draining on your body. The saying is if you can comfortably spend the night at Camp 3, you're ready to go for the summit. So after Camp 3, you come all the way back down. And some people even go further down the valley. We went further down the valley by a couple thousand feet and spent about a week just resting and recuperating. And then you're ready to go for the summit. So you come back to base camp. You skip 1, go to 2, go to 3. This is the south call, so now you're in the death zone, up, down, and then all the way out. So just to go for the summit, it's about 5 days when you actually end up going for the summit. I was gone for about 2 months while I was gone, and that was considered pretty fast to do it in that short amount of time. The other interesting thing that a lot of people don't realize about a big mountain like this, and most of the big 8,000 meter peaks in the Himalayas, is there's really a narrow window when you can climb it. For Everest, you can climb it pretty much from June 15th to about June 30, 31, or excuse me, back up, May 15th to May 31st or June 1, something like that. So there's about a 2-week window that you can summit, and out of that 2 weeks, you might have 4 or 5 days that you can summit. So people always ask, why is there so much crowding on the mountain? And it's because there's so few summit days that you can go for, and everybody's trying to do the same exact thing that you are. And so they're all crowding for the summit just like you. So next slide's a little video clip. One of my boys found it on the web somewhere. I can't take credit for it at all. Is that too loud? Is that better? It's just a little graphic that shows the route to the summit. And that section right there is called the yellow band. And then you're coming over the Geneva Spur right there. That's the south call. And that's a spot called the balcony right there. South summit, Hillary step, and then there's the top. So the summit of it, I know as Americans we get used to feet. It's 29,029 feet. Everybody else, the metric system seems to work just fine. 8,848 meters. So it's pretty high up there. The next time you're taking a flight somewhere, I don't know if this is still on. Is that still on? I think you turned me down a little bit. Is that better? There we go.
I guess it changes all the volumes.
Yeah, it changes all the volumes. That's okay. Can you guys hear me in the back okay? I claim to have a pretty loud mouth. Next time you're taking a flight somewhere and they say you're at 30,000 feet, you just look out the window and that's kind of the view that you're getting from the summit up there. It's quite high, and you feel every bit of the elevation when you're up that high. So just some basic slides of what looks like at base camp. That's the dining tent that we spend a lot of time in. These are our personal tents right here. And this is a town just up the valley a little bit called Gorak-Shep. And yes, they do have cell service, so you can get your cell phones 3G, so you can get your cell phone working there. Of course, all solar powered right in through here. They also have digesters that run off of human and animal manure. So these digesters, they capitalize off of the off-gassing and run generators, and will power the village there as well. So they collect that's another question people ask, what do they do with all the human waste? They actually harvest it and put it in these digesters and create electricity with it. They'll also take it further down the valley and they will mix it into the soil, use it as a fertilizer. I know that sounds weird, but when you don't have a lot of resources, you're making do with whatever you can get, right? So there's us at base camp, and this is my friend Steve Pearson who climbed with me, and then that's our Sherpa right there, Tile. When you're at base camp, you basically have to stay within the confines from a camp standpoint of the prayer flags. They have a llama that comes to base camp and actually blesses the base camp. Before we went up on the mountain, we had to have what's called a puja ceremony. So you go into a llama at a monastery, and they say all these prayers over you, and you bring your climbing gear in, like your crampons, your ice axe, all that, and they blow juniper smoke on them to bless them and protect them. They're very superstitious about piercing the mountain, and so they blow this juniper smoke on it because your axe is going to pierce the mountain and your crampons are going to pierce the mountain. So anything affiliated with a climb, they're going to blow juniper smoke on it. And then they tie this red string around your neck and pronounce some blessings on you and whatnot. And our team leader said that it was mandatory, had to do it. And because we came up a little bit later than the rest of the group. And we said, well, how will they know if we've had the puja ceremony? He goes, trust me, he's a Westerner from Washington State. He goes, trust me, they will know if you haven't had the puja ceremony, and they won't climb with you, and you'll have to go back down the valley and do it. Like, okay, fine. So we did it on the way up. I'm glad we did. It was really an interesting experience. So you wear this red string around your neck the entire time you're climbing. So for 2 months I had it on. And he told us when we get back home, you can keep it on until it wears off, until it falls apart and then it comes off. He said, don't throw it in the trash. I think he said, don't put it in the rubbish bin. He said, you can burn it or you can save it, but don't just throw it in the common garbage. I thought that was interesting. And he said, if you don't want to wait until it wears off, you can cut it with scissors. So when I came home, my youngest, he came over, he cut it off me because I didn't want to wear it anymore. And I saved it. I have it in a little envelope at home. So kind of a neat experience to have. This is one of my favorite pictures. I just took this with an iPhone. So there's a shout out, I guess, to Apple. I don't know. That's just that pano feature. This is Everest right here. And you'll notice that these are clouds right here. That's not cloud, that's snow blowing off the summit. The mountain's high enough that it's in the jet stream. And so the wind is always blowing about 100 to 150 miles an hour up there. That just is what it is. You can actually, at base camp, you can hear it. It sounds like a freight train up there. And you look up at that and think, there's no way I'm going up there. But what happens during that last part of June is the wind shift and the jet stream moves. And when I got to the summit, it was almost as calm as this room is right in here. There was no wind at the top at all. It was about 20 or 25 below. So as far as Everest conditions go, it's just about perfect conditions. We're super, super fortunate. This peak right here, when I start talking about Nepal, I start sounding like the Nepal Travel Council. You could go here with, I wouldn't say it's easy, but you could get here with, if you're reasonably fit, reasonably healthy, you could go here. I would encourage anybody to put a backpack on and trek towards base camp. It really literally is life-changing. You come up this valley right here, this is called the Khumbu Valley, and this glacier just goes all carved out this valley you can see right here. But you land in a town called Lukla, and you spend about a week trekking towards base camp, 7, 8, 9 days or something like that. And at each of these little villages, they have these tea houses you can stay at, and they feed you, and there's just such a wonderful spirit there. It really, I promise, is life-changing to go there and experience all this. I don't know why that's shaking, but we'll go with it. Yeah, go ahead.
What was the temperature like at base camp during the day, during June or whatever?
That's a good question. Temperature at base camp is about like a typical, notice I said typical December or January for Utah. So it's not super, super cold. It's tolerable. Right now, obviously we're in a very warm trend. This isn't normal that we're in. But kind of a typical December, January, when the sun came out, it was very warm. When it goes behind the clouds, it gets cold. Kind of like being up skiing or something like that. You know, it's manageable. But when the wind blows and you're up on the mountain, it gets very cold for sure. Yep. Yeah, go ahead. Another one.
Yeah, how much money would one need generally?
That's another question I get all the time. So that's a fair question. And I answer it this way. I don't answer it. I don't, and it's fair enough. I will tell you, go out on the web and look if you want to. Usually about the only thing that I will share is that the government, you can't climb this without getting a permit from the government. Just the piece of paper to climb, now they've raised the price. When I did it was 10,000 US dollars, now it's 11. So just the piece of paper that says, yeah, you can go. And it's a pretty uneventful piece of paper. It's just this, anybody remember mimeographs or have heard of mimeographs? It's like this old way you use chemicals and like spin a drum and make copies of things before Xerox machines came online. It was a mimeographed piece of paper that had our names on it and our nationality and our passport numbers, and then a bunch of stuff in Nepali that I couldn't read. That was it. So we had that piece of paper, we had it in our pocket. We had to carry that if we were ever asked for it. But just that piece of paper was that expensive. It's not a cheap endeavor, that's for sure. So when you leave base camp and go into the Khumbu icefall, you're going on all these crazy ladders like this. If you look at this slide right here, this is 2 ladders that are kind of lashed together right here. And they have a team of guys called the icefall doctors, and they're Nepali citizens, and it's a very elite group. There's about 10 or a dozen of them that are managing this route through the icefall. This is probably the most dangerous part of the climb right here, is in the Khumbu icefall. But if you look up here at my hand really quickly, these crevasses, so this is a crevasse right here. These crevasses can be a couple hundred to 500 feet deep, and these ladders are just going across them like this. And there's not enough rope to go down and then come back up the other side. So really the only way you can do it is just putting these cheap, large, red, Asian manufactured ladders across them. They're not really, I mean, this isn't like OSHA approved or anything. They're just these crappy, crummy ladders. You just kind of look at them and go, well, okay, that's all I'm going to do. That's the only way to go across it. There's no other choice. That's it. So this one's even a little bit more revolting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ladders, to get across pieces like this. And you're going up these things, and if you kind of do one of these tricks, it'll rock on you a little bit. So you just kind of go up and come down, and they usually will put in 2 because this will be a big bottleneck. So usually they'll have an up and then a down. And because of, a lot of times it corresponds to the side of the road you drive on in your country. And so when you come up, you'll see people going up this one and down this one. And, as an American, I think we're used to, maybe going up the right and coming down the left. But everybody was a little bit different. So I got in, I was about halfway in the middle here. and somebody tried coming down as I was in the middle. I'm like, they didn't speak English. I don't know where they were from, and I was kind of doing this, like, this is a universal sign for please don't come down here. I'm here, and it didn't stop him. He just came down. So and you can't back down. So what I ended up having to do was just reach under the back of it like this, and he just kind of went past me, and I said namaste to him, and he just I don't know what the story was, but yeah. So it does sound a little hair raising, but you'll notice they have a fixed line right here. So you're clipped into a fixed line. So you're wearing a harness, and then you have I just call it a pigtail with a carabiner. And so you're hooked into this right here. So you're not gonna, if for some reason you were to fall, you're not gonna go down 1,000 feet or something like that. You're just gonna zip back to here and maybe break an arm or something like that. But you wouldn't end your life, going down into the crevasse right there. Camp 3, so we're slowly making our way up the mountain. We're at Camp 3 right here. Most of the photos that I took, I do like Apple products, but this is not meant to be a shout out for Apple in any way, shape, or form. I just snapped most of these on my iPhone. That's all. And I'm not really a picture taker. My wife gets mad at me. I don't really take a bunch of pictures, but I snapped this one just one morning as we were waking up because I thought it looked kind of nice. At Camp 3 here, you're literally camped on the side of the mountain, and there are all kinds of stories of, notice this fixed line right here. So you're in your tent right here, and right off the edge is probably 2,000 feet straight down. And so there's all kinds of stories of people getting up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, and they just have their liners on from their climbing boots, and they're really slippery. They're not meant to be, they're just meant to be soft in the tent so you don't cut stuff up. And people will step out, they don't hook in, they stand over here to do their business, and they lose their footing and slide right down the mountain to their death. It happens more than you'd think. So a pee bottle is mandatory. You have to get good at using a pee bottle, and I'll just leave it right there, but you can kind of get the hint of what's going on right there. When you leave Camp 3, so here's Camp 3 where the tents are, you get in line with like 100 of your best friends. So this would have been May 17th, and we summited on the 19th. So on May 17th, we were just here and getting in line, and you're climbing up the Lhotse face with all these other climbers right here. The problem with it is a guy like this, you're using supplemental oxygen at this point, so you have tanks in your backpack, and you're using a respirator to breathe with. This guy might be standing there for 5 minutes, and you've got a finite amount of air in your back. And so if you're standing there for 5 minutes waiting for this guy, you're not going to make it. So you have to end up passing this guy and just continuing on as best you can. It's pretty steep here. It's not as steep as it looks, but it's pretty steep. If you lose your footing, you're going to have a bad day. It is disconcerting to unhook from the rope, but there's not much else you can do. Here's another picture. This is on our way down. So this would have been on May 20th when we were coming back down. And you can see all these people queued up and coming across. So this was a better weather day, and everybody decided they were going to make a break for the summit. So this is coming up the Lhotse face. Camp 3 is way down over here. So they're coming up like this, and then you're traversing across to a section called the Yellow Band. And we were rappelling down another section of the Yellow Band, but there's so many people, they start coming up your ropes that you're supposed to be going down. So that's problematic as well. People always ask, why is everybody wearing red? Are they all Ute fans or something like that? And the answer is no. You just want something contrasting to the snow. So I had a blue suit just because that was what they had, and of course I'm a Cougar fan, right? So I had to have a blue suit. I never saw anybody with a white suit. That'd be like golfing with a green golf ball or something like that. Probably not a good idea. So anyway, you just want a contrasting color to the snow right here. Oh, I'll click back on it. Would you turn the volume up again for me? A little bit, see if this works. So I've got a little video clip here, and this is a news clip from ABC News. They're talking about the 2012 climbing season.
Look at this scene at Mount Everest. Each of those lights in the distance there are climbers. 4 have died with death being laying on sort of traffic jam. And ABC Blind Label for that, and why so many are trying to get to the top right now.
These are images from high up on Everest. The path to the peak clogged with climbers, as many as 200, gambling with their very lives. In this time-lapse video, you can see the headlamps of the climbers nearing the 29,000-foot peak.
Look at the black
But the going is slow, and the oxygen runs out quickly as they pass through the notorious death zone, thin air, and sub-zero temperatures. National Geographic is documenting the ascent by one of the teams, which today reached the summit, where they took this photo. Some have made it to the top, including a 73-year-old Japanese woman, who is now the oldest person to ever climb Mount Everest. But 4 died this week, and an American climber collapsed on his way down, and his rated climber found him and abandoned his own summit attempt to carry him to safety. Both are now suffering severe frostbite. Everest dangers are well known. The single deadliest ascent, when 8 people perished in 1996.
When things start going wrong and the clock starts ticking away, that's when things can go wrong in a big way and in a hurry.
This year, there are just too many people on the mountain, making the treacherous trek to the top of the world that much more dangerous. Ron Claiborne, ABC News, New York.
So couple of updates. Since that time, there was a Japanese guy, 80, who summited. So he's got the world record now, which is amazing to think about. And he summited in 13 when I was there as well. Just amazing. He summited with his son, who's in his 40s. And unfortunately now, the single biggest tragedy or loss of life on Everest was during the earthquake a couple of years ago. There was a big earthquake, and it shook loose a big giant piece of ice up on an adjacent mountain called Pumori, and it came down and killed, I think, 19 or 20 people at base camp. So people just like in their tent, and they got wiped out during the earthquake, assuming most people remember the earthquake that they had in Nepal, I think it was 2 years ago, something like that, 2.5 years ago now. Okay, so we're almost to the summit here. This is the South Col. So here at the South Col, you're clearly into what's called the death zone. If you read or are familiar with the John Krakauer's book, Into Thin Air, a lot of it happens right here at the South Col. So there's a guy named Beck Weathers, and he perishes right here at he comes close to perishing right here at the South Col. This is where he stumbled back into camp, and they saved his life and found him right here. But this historically is one of the most difficult places to be up on the mountain just because of the elevation. I didn't take any pictures of it. Have none. You could go out online and if you want to see them. But kind of over here off the slide over to the right is where they have the trash heap. When I was there were 4 climbers' bodies wrapped in sleeping bags and rope, just kind of stacked over there waiting for somebody to take them down if they could get them down off the mountain. I have no idea how long they've been up there. From here up, that's where the 200-something bodies were. Before we went up on the mountain, we talked a lot about this, and our team leader told us we were very, very likely to see bodies in various states of repose. And, he said, my advice is just not focus on them at all. Just keep your eyes forward. You don't want to focus on any of that negative energy. Just keep the positive energy going, and that's what I did effectively. But some of the folks are just like right off the main path as you're going up, off the fixed lines. So there's not much you can do about it, but I still just tried to focus straight ahead and not focus on any of that negative energy. Just another picture. When you leave the South Col, you go towards this section here called the balcony. We started at about 7 o'clock at night and summited about 7:30 the next morning. Between 7 and 8, it took about 12 hours, and you're climbing all night to get to the summit the following morning. So I really like this picture. My friend Steve took this picture. That's me standing there. And I didn't know until we got home. He sent me this picture and told me to take a look at it. What do you notice about the horizon of this picture? Does it look flat, or is it look a little curved right there? I think you were high enough you can start seeing the curve right there of the planet. Right there, the clouds are just hugging to the atmosphere right there. And this is the summit right here. He's standing on the south summit right here. So you go down, across, and up like that. I'm going to zoom in right here, and this projector has some really good resolution so you can see it. Can you see these climbers going up the side of the mountain? We'd already been to the top, and we were coming back down right now. To go from about here, this is the bottom of the Hillary step, to the summit right there. It looks really close. That's another 2 hours. And the reason why is because you're taking a step, and you're taking like 4 breaths. and then you're going to take another step like this, you're moving that slow. It's just that draining and difficult on your body, and it's just the lack of oxygen. So up here at the summit, there's a third the available oxygen that there is at sea level. It's just not as much. So there's less molecules in the same box. If you want to think of like a cubic meter or something, there's just less molecules of oxygen. Oxygen's still 21%. There's just less molecules there because the pressure is so much lower up high like this. That's what's essentially going on. So you can see there's zoomed in a little bit more. If you were to fall or slip right here, which is a possibility, this is about 8,000 or 9,000 feet straight down. This side over here is about 12,000 feet straight down. So this side is Nepal. This side is into China. I did not see it when I was there, but there was a guy, if you remember, this was 2013. If you remember back to 2013, there was one of those Red Bull guys that jumped out of a hot air balloon from like 70 or 80,000 feet. You guys remember that? There was a Red Bull guy who jumped off of, somewhere right here is a Russian guy, and had one of those squirrel suits, so he jumped off and then pulled the chutes and landed all while guzzling a Red Bull or something like that. I don't know. So you can go out online and see it. Somebody sent it to me after I got home. I was pretty amazed that the guy had done that. So you can't jump quite off the summit because this flattens out like this, but right about here is where he jumped off. So he almost jumped off the summit. If you want to see that, I'm not supporting Red Bull in any way, shape, or form, but if you want to see a crazy Russian guy jumping off of Mount Everest, you can do that. And then there's just another close-up of it. So we're almost to the summit right here. Just one more shot of the Hillary step, and then the final traverse as you're going for the summit. And then that's close to the top as we're going down. This is the south summit, the traverse across, and then this is the top of the Hillary step right there. It's actually a really severe bottleneck just because of how many climbers goes one at a time. Oh, I like that picture too. That's just as the sun was rising, and I was coming across the south summit right there, and I grabbed that picture of the sun rising to a point. And then there's my summit shot. So that was May 19th of 2013, about 7:29 in the morning, and my friend Steve took the picture of me with Nepal kind of in the background right there. So one other picture, most of my trips I take American flag with me, and then the summit team signs it and I frame and put them up in my office. On this particular trip, I set a goal within a goal. While I was gone, you have a lot of downtime, and so my wife bought me, it looks way bigger than it is, but it's only about this size, one of those little Servicemen Book of Mormons. And I brought it with me, and my goal was to read it while I was gone. Believe it or not, there's a lot of downtime when you're climbing. About 10% of your time is actually spent climbing. 90% is just literally sitting around acclimatizing and not really doing anything. And so I wanted to maximize my time, so I set a goal to read the Book of Mormon, which I did while I was gone. My friend Steve, who's always also a good LDS guy, I took this to Camp 2 with me. And my friend Steve said, "Do you think a Book of Mormon's ever been to the summit?" And I said, "I have no idea." He goes, "You think we should take it?" And I said, "That's an awesome idea. You carry it." So he carried it to the summit, and we got a picture with it at the summit. I know this is shocking, but I do not have a Facebook page. I do have an Instagram account, but I never use it. One of my kids set it up for me. I'm that old, I know. But he posted, so my friend Steve, he's 20 years younger than me, he posted this on his Facebook page, and within less than 24 hours of being back in Utah, the Deseret News called us and did a story on us. So if you want to read more about it, you can read about, and we're pretty certain this is the first Book of Mormon on the summit. Is it significant? I don't know. We took it, I still have it, and we both signed it to the effect that it went to the summit, and we got a picture of it. So most of the summits that I go to, almost every one without fail, I sing High on the Mountaintop at the summit of it as well, which is kind of a fun little thing. So a couple more pictures, and then we'll call it good here. This is the very, very summit. People always ask what's at the very top. That is what's at the very top right there. So prayer scarves, flags, you know, the Tibetan prayer flags, all that. You guys have probably seen the different Tibetan prayer flags. by the way, each one of those colors is a different chant for their prayer, and they each mean something different, like land, water, sky. Our Sherpa came over. He had a really long roll of them, like 20 or 25 feet. He came over and tapped me on the head and was saying some kind of prayer, and then let it go in the wind. I have no idea what he said, but I've had good luck ever since. So. But anyway, that's what the very, very summit looks like. They ask you before you go to the top, they ask you out of respect for deity, because there's a bunch of faiths that believe deity resides at the summit. They say, please don't stand on the very summit, which I did not do. But I did reach over and touch that little spire right there. So I reached over and touched that like this, because I didn't want anybody saying, well, you didn't go all the way to the top. Well, I touched that little thing on the top. So when I reached over and touched it, this is actually a plexiglass box about this size. When I looked down in there, there was a little brass Buddha smiling back up at me. So if somebody wants to know what's at the very, very top of the world, that, at least in 2013, that was what it was at the top of it. And then there's my last summit photo right there. Again, just a little panorama of all the people that had come up to the summit. We were, I think, 10, 11, and 12 that particular day at the summit at 7:30 or whatever in the morning it was. And all these people started coming up. So people ask, how big is the summit? It's probably not much bigger than about from here to the chairs to around that you could actually kind of stand on. That's about it. I think I'm standing pretty close to the top right here, just taking this whole panoramic shot. But that's looking back out over Nepal right there. I think with this you can kind of see a little bit of the curve of the earth too. What do you think? A little bit of it there? Okay. All right, so let me just wrap up by saying I want to encourage you guys to do difficult things. Starting a business, definitely challenging, definitely difficult, totally worth it. I can't say enough good about encouraging you to do very difficult things. And with that, I'll say namaste to you. All right, thank you.